I don't talk about this often, but I think I need to now. Maybe someone will believe me. It happened when I was 10, back in my village in Nigeria. My mother died when I was 6, and my father remarried a year later. Her name was Aunty Aduke, but I never called her mama like she wanted. I just couldn't. She wasn't like my real mother. At first, she tried to be nice. She cooked for me and braided my hair. But over time, things changed. She'd pinch me when no one was looking or blame me for things I didn't do. My father never saw it, though. He said I was just a stubborn child who didn't like her. One night, I woke up to strange sounds coming from outside. Our house was small, just 2 rooms, and the thin walls made it easy to hear everything. I could hear Aunty Aduke talking, but not to my father. It sounded like she was whispering to someone, or something. I got up and peeked through the crack in the door. She was outside, squatting by the clay pot we used to store water. The moonlight was bright enough for me to see her face. She was talking to the pot, pouring something red into it. It smelled like palm oil mixed with something rotten. Her voice was soft, almost like a song. She kept repeating the same words over and over. Take them, bring me more. I didn't understand what she meant, but I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to scream, but I was too scared. I crept back to my mat and pretended to sleep. The next day, I noticed my father looked weaker. He coughed a lot and barely touched his food. By the end of the week, he couldn't get out of bed. Aunty Aduke said it was just a fever, but something didn't feel right. One night, I decided to follow her. When she thought I was asleep, she took the clay pot and walked deep into the bush. I stayed far behind, hiding in the shadows. She stopped at a big tree with roots that looked like fingers clawing at the ground. She placed the pot at the base of the tree and started chanting again. That's when I saw it. The shadows under the tree started to move. They stretched out, twisting and writhing like snakes. A figure stepped out of the darkness, tall and thin, with glowing eyes. It didn't have a face, just those eyes. Aunty Aduke bowed her head and said, "He's almost gone. Give me more time." The figure reached into the pot and pulled out a dark, slimy mass. It looked like a heart, but it was black and pulsing. The figure crushed it in its hands, and I swear I heard my father cry out in his sleep, even from where I was hiding. I ran back to the house as fast as I could. The next morning, I told my father's brother, Uncle Tond, everything I saw. He didn't believe me at first, but when he checked the clay pot, he found bones and feathers inside. Uncle Tond called the elders, and they confronted Aunty Aduke. She denied everything, but when they smashed the pot, a foul smell filled the air. My father died that same day. Aunty Aduke disappeared the night after the elders cursed her. No one ever saw her again. I still have nightmares about the figure under the tree. Sometimes I wonder if it's still out there, waiting for someone else to make a deal. After my father's burial, the house felt emptier than ever. Uncle Tond moved in for a while to look after me, but I could see the worry in his eyes. The elders had done their rituals, poured libations, and burned incense, but I knew something was still wrong. At night, I heard whispers again. Not in the house, but from the bush outside. The sound would start faintly, like the rustling of dry leaves, and then grow louder, almost like someone was calling my name. Tomiwa. Tomiwa. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just the wind. But one night, it got too loud to ignore. The voice was clearer, closer, and it wasn't just one voice, it was many. I couldn't sleep. I sat on my mat, hugging my knees, waiting for the sunrise. Just before dawn, I heard footsteps outside. At first, I thought it was Uncle Tond, but when I peeked through the window, I saw her. Aunty Aduke. She was standing by the tree in the middle of the compound, the one my father used to sit under. She was wearing the same wrapper she had the night she disappeared, but it was torn and dirty. Her skin looked pale, almost grey, and her eyes were empty. Not glowing, not like the figure in the bush, just empty. She didn't move. She just stood there, staring at the house. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. Instead, I crawled back to my mat and hid under my blanket, shaking. By the time the sun came up, she was gone. When I told Uncle Tond, he didn't believe me. "It's your imagination, Tomiwa," he said. "You've been through a lot." But I knew what I saw. That evening, the whispers came back. Louder this time. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to go to the elders myself. When I got to Baba Agbe's hut, he was already waiting for me, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a bowl of kola nuts. He looked at me like he knew why I was there. "Sit," he said, his voice low and steady. I told him everything, about the whispers, about seeing Aunty Aduke, about the tree. He listened without interrupting, chewing slowly on a kola nut. When I finished, he nodded and said, "The tree. It is not an ordinary tree." I didn't understand what he meant. He stood up and grabbed a calabash filled with powdery white chalk. "We will go there tonight," he said. When night fell, Baba Agbe and 2 other elders came to the compound. They carried torches and muttered prayers under their breath. I stayed close to Baba Agbe, clutching his wrapper like a frightened child. When we reached the tree, Baba Agbe drew a circle around it with the chalk. Then he poured something from a bottle, gin, I think, and started chanting. The air grew cold, colder than I thought possible. The whispers turned into wails, and the ground beneath the tree began to shake. Then she appeared. Aunty Aduke stepped out from behind the tree, her empty eyes now filled with anger. "You shouldn't have called them," she said, her voice sounding like it came from deep inside a cave. The elders didn't stop chanting. Baba Agbe threw more powder at her, and she screamed, a sound so piercing I thought my ears would bleed. The shadows under the tree began to move again, just like they had that night in the bush. But this time, the figure didn't come out. Instead, it stayed in the shadows, watching. Aunty Aduke fell to her knees, her body twisting and contorting in ways that didn't seem human. She reached out to me, her hand trembling. "Tomiwa," she whispered. "Help me." I froze. I didn't know what to do. But Baba Agbe stepped in front of me. "She is no longer of this world," he said. With one final chant, he threw the last of the powder into the air. The tree burst into flames, and Aunty Aduke let out a cry so loud it seemed to shake the entire village. When the fire died down, the tree was gone, and so was she. The elders said the tree had been a portal, a place where spirits could cross into our world. Aunty Aduke had made a deal with something she didn't understand, and it had consumed her. I never heard the whispers again, but I still think about her sometimes. I wonder if she found peace, or if she's still trapped somewhere, waiting. Life returned to a strange kind of normal after that night. Uncle Ton stayed with me until I was old enough to look after myself, but the events of those days left scars I couldn't see. Even though the whispers were gone, I couldn't shake the feeling that something still lingered in the air around our compound. People stopped visiting after dark, saying they felt watched when they walked past the house. Some even said they heard faint cries near where the tree used to stand. I didn't tell anyone, but I felt it too. One day, while sweeping the compound, I noticed something odd. At the spot where the tree had burned, tiny green shoots were growing. I froze, staring at them. They shouldn't have been there. Baba Agbe and the elders had salted the ground to ensure nothing would grow. I wanted to pull them out, but something held me back. It felt like the air grew heavier the closer I got to the spot. I left the shoots alone and told myself I'd deal with it later. Weeks turned into months. The shoots became a small tree, its branches thin but growing fast. The neighbors started talking again. "That boy's house is cursed," they whispered. "Nothing good will come from there." One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat outside watching the tree. It seemed to move, swaying gently even though there was no wind. I couldn't look away. Then, I heard it. Not the whispers, but something worse. A faint, raspy breathing, like someone struggling to inhale. It was coming from the tree. My heart raced. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like they were rooted to the ground. Slowly, I stepped closer. "Tomiwa," the voice rasped, weak and hoarse. My chest tightened. I knew that voice. It was Aunty Aduke's. The branches twisted as if reaching for me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a stone. "Leave me alone," I screamed, tears streaming down my face. That night, I went to Baba Agbej again. He listened quietly as I told him what happened, his face grave. When I finished, he let out a long sigh. "The work is not done," he said. He gathered the elders again, and they came to the compound with more chalk, more gin, and more prayers. This time, they didn't just chant. They dug. Beneath the growing tree, they found something buried in the soil. A small, clay pot, the same one I'd seen Aunty Aduke pour oil into. It was cracked, but inside were strange objects, a bundle of hair tied with red thread, chicken bones, and a scrap of cloth that looked like it came from my father's shirt. "This is how she bound herself to the land," one elder said. "She used this to tie her spirit here, even after death." They burned everything, muttering incantations as the flames consumed the pot and its contents. The tree withered almost instantly, its branches curling in on themselves like a dying spider. I thought it was over. I really did. But that night, I had a dream. I was standing in the middle of the compound, staring at the burned patch of earth. The air was heavy, and the sky was dark, even though there were no clouds. Then I heard her. "You think it's over?" Aunty Aduke's voice whispered, cold and sharp. "It's never over." I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. I haven't told anyone about the dream. I don't know if it was just my mind playing tricks on me or if it was something more. All I know is that I still feel her sometimes. In the quiet moments, when the wind is still and the shadows grow long, it feels like she's watching me. Waiting. The dream stayed with me. Days turned into weeks, and no matter what I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that Aunty Aduke wasn't gone. I kept waking up at night, drenched in sweat, always at the same time, just after midnight. The air in my room would feel cold, even though it was the dry season. And there was always the smell, faint but sharp, like something rotting. One night, I decided I couldn't live like this anymore. I had to know if she was truly gone. I went to Baba Agbej again, but this time he didn't seem surprised to see me. He was sitting outside his hut, staring into the fire. "You feel her still, don't you?" he asked, his voice low. I nodded. "She's not gone." "I know it." He sighed and motioned for me to sit. "There are some spirits that cling to life even after death. She is one of them. Her bitterness, her anger, it keeps her tied to this world." "What can I do?" I asked. "The question is not what you can do," he said, his eyes fixed on the flames. "It's what you're willing to do." That night, he gave me a small pouch filled with strange-smelling herbs and ashes. He told me to sprinkle it around the compound and chant a prayer he taught me. He warned me, though, if her spirit is truly there, it will show itself. You must not show fear. Fear gives it power. I waited until the moon was high before I started. The village was quiet, and even the crickets seemed to have gone silent. I started at the edge of the compound, sprinkling the powder and muttering the prayer under my breath. My hands trembled, but I kept going. As I moved closer to the spot where the tree once stood, the air grew heavier, colder. And then, it happened. The wind picked up suddenly, swirling around me even though the trees in the distance stood still. The ground beneath the burned patch of earth cracked, and a faint light began to glow from the cracks. A shadow emerged from the ground, twisting and writhing as it took form. It was her. Aunty Aduke's face was twisted in anger, her eyes hollow and dark. "Why won't you leave me alone?" she hissed, her voice echoing like 1,000 whispers. I froze. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it might burst, but I remembered Baba Agbage's warning. I couldn't show fear. "This is not your home anymore," I said, my voice shaking. "Go back to where you came from." She laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine. "You think you can command me? After what I've done, after what I've sacrificed?" The shadows around her stretched toward me, clawing at the ground. My legs felt like they would give out, but I kept chanting the prayer Baba Agbage taught me. As the words left my lips, she screamed. The glow from the ground grew brighter, and the shadows began to dissolve. Her form flickered, her face contorting between anger and fear. "No," she cried, her voice cracking. "You don't understand. He's still coming." "Who's coming?" I shouted, but it was too late. Her figure collapsed into the ground, and the light vanished. The air grew still again, but her final words echoed in my mind, "He's still coming." I told Baba Agbage everything the next day. He didn't say much, just nodded and stared at the horizon. "What did she mean?" I asked. "There are things in this world, Tomiwa," he said slowly, "things older and darker than even the spirits we know. If she made a deal with one of them, then her death might not be the end. It might only be the beginning." Since that night, the compound has been quiet. The whispers are gone, the tree hasn't grown back, and the neighbors no longer avoid the house. But I can't shake the feeling that her warning wasn't just for me. Sometimes, in the silence of the night, I still hear faint footsteps outside. Not hers, but something heavier, slower, as if whatever she feared is drawing closer. I don't know what's coming, but I'm afraid I'll find out.
There are a lot of lessons to be learned from this story. I would love to hear your opinion in comment section. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to like, share, and press the red button to subscribe to my channel. Bye.